Joining me now, Pennsylvania Congressman and member of the House Rules Committee and House Appropriations Committee, Guy Reschenthaler, and Army Special Forces Green Beret and Chief of Operations for Operation Flying to Freedom, Jeremy Locke. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. When Biden spoke yesterday, he claimed that 90% of Americans were already withdrawn. However, in the official transcript released by the White House, the number was edited to say 98%. No explanation, by the way. Congressman, they have repeatedly said they have no idea how many Americans are left behind. I am sick and tired of socialist lies and the pretense that this administration is at all competent.
Good, Chris. First off, thanks for having me on as always. But yes, and I'm very skeptical about that number because we were told there was a larger number. I cannot recall off the top of my head, but then that number drastically reduced. Well, the stats didn't make sense. It was reduced largely because the Biden administration stopped counting green card holders, only U.S. citizens. Although under our law, those green card holders clearly have as many rights as our U.S. citizens. And all those green card holders are the interpreters, are our allies on the ground that risk their own lives helping us, and were granted a green card for a pathway, for a way to them to become citizens. So it's shameful what's happening. Also, Joe Biden has lied this entire time, and I hate to call a president a liar, but he's been lying, he's been misleading the American people. Remember when he sat in that interview and he said that we would stay until every American was out? Clearly, that was not the case. When he said that he had a plan, that this went well, yet this was a debacle, and that he now turns around and blames everybody but himself. You know, the president can stand there and say the buck stops here. But if you then say that and blame everybody but yourself, it really doesn't. He's shifting blame. And just one last point. Trying to say that this is the fault of the Americans that are left on the ground is a form of victim shaming. You know, we have pregnant women that are on the ground that reports are saying that they're being abused. We have a report of a 3-year-old, a toddler, on the ground. That's not the toddler's fault. It's the Biden administration's fault. It's Mark Milley's fault, Jake Sullivan, Blinken. It's all their fault. It's not a pregnant woman. It's not a baby. It's not people that are literally trapped behind enemy lines, Chris.
The Biden administration victim shaming. I like that. Now, because that's exactly what's happening. Speaking of Jake Sullivan, yesterday describing the administration's plan to rescue the Americans they left behind. Listen.
We will work through any American who's still in the country, just as we did for the last 2 weeks. We'll call them, we'll email them, we'll WhatsApp them. They can talk to us about how to create a plan and execute on that plan. We'll do it person by person, case by case, by air or by ground. Anyone who wants to leave the country, we will work with them to make that happen.
Oh, wait a minute, Jeremy. You're going to go up against the Taliban armed with American rifles, with American hardware, and you're going to be armed with a WhatsApp and an email, thanks to the Biden administration. Can you tell? I mean, there's all kinds of wrong with this. Your thoughts, sir?
Yes, thank you for having me. The unfortunate thing with that is we're now getting reports that when people are going through these Taliban checkpoints, they're getting their phones confiscated. They find any U.S. numbers in there. They then call those numbers, and if an American or an English speaker answers, that owner of that phone is then executed. So it's the situation over there is very dire. We need to get people out of there. We need to get people out of there now. And it needs to happen.
Well, no kidding. Biden's approval rating dropping dramatically, growing calls for Biden to resign or be impeached. But Congressman, do you really think your caucus, the Republicans, if they were ever given power again, would ever impeach Biden? Isn't it true that only socialists have the guts to really oppose their opposition? And most of the GOP is really just like Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell back in 2016. They just want to move on and let Democrats get away with their backstabbing and their treachery.
Well, a few quick points on that. First off, I don't agree that just because there aren't votes in the Senate, we shouldn't proceed, as Mitch McConnell said today. That didn't stop the Democrats, because the Democrats, the socialists, they know that impeachment was nothing more than a tool to distract the Trump administration, to tarnish the reputation of the president. And also, it was to fire up their base heading into an election. It was for them a political exercise. So we as Republicans need to recognize that when the Democrats, when the socialists change the rules of the game, we have to then take the rules as they now are and play by them. We can't take the proverbial high road and expect to win. when the rules had been changed and rewritten to favor the socialists. So that's a long way of answering your question, but we need to look at that as a serious option. But let me be clear about something. It's going nowhere until we take back the House in the midterms, which I think we are. And let me just say this, too. For everyone out there that's saying, where's the high crime? Where's the misdemeanor? They impeached President Trump over a phone call. They lowered the bar so low that now this is a political exercise. And while we're talking about phone calls, let's see the transcript of Biden talking to Ghani and about the fact that Biden clearly through that transcript knew what was occurring, was groveling to Ghani saying we need to change the quote unquote perception. That is a phone call that's impeachable, not even to mention what's going on at our southern border, but just to focus on Afghanistan.
Gotcha.
This has been the first time, to my knowledge, that the United States has done an unconditional surrender to an enemy. Heads need to roll for this, not just Biden, but the top military brass.
Right. Jeremy, I got one last question for you. You're Chief Operations for Operation Flying to Freedom, working towards rescuing Americans and allies from Afghanistan to succeed basically where Biden failed. Tell us what's going on over there on the ground and how can folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. So the good news we do have coming out of there are a lot of patriots. There's a lot of organizations that are doing their best through Americans that are on the ground and American sympathizers to help Americans and its allies and the victims of the Taliban to get to safety. And once they get to safety, then we're going to be having this humanitarian refugee crisis, getting them back to their countries they need to go to. So that's what we're focusing on right now, is first and foremost helping people get out so they can escape being killed, tortured, and get to countries that they are safe so we can pass them on to freedom. So what we have been doing with Flying to Freedom, this is an initiative created by Aero Recovery Group, who are ex-special operation veterans that work in the disaster relief space and humanitarian space. So we are now in a humanitarian and refugee crisis. We need to get these people out. If you go on to aeroglobalcommunity.org, you can donate to our cause. We are connected with a ton of patriots that are receiving active, up-to-date information from those on the ground within Afghanistan that are using our best to create rat lines to get them around these Taliban checkpoints to these borders over when we can, and then facilitate their safe recovery back to the US or wherever country it is, because these people need help. They need it now. Time is running out. Time has been running out, and we can't sit there and do nothing. Yep. And I am proud to say that there are operators, there are ex-military that are not sitting down in retirement. They're standing up for America, and they're standing up for the freedom and what we promised, not only our American citizens, but also those who have helped us for the last 20 years. And that's to protect them. That's what we're doing.
God's blessings to you and everybody that's working. Thank God we can rely on you. We can't rely on Biden or his party, but we can rely on you. Congressman and former U.S. Navy JAG officer Guy Reschenthaler and retired U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret Jeremy Locke. Gentlemen, thank you very much, both of you, for your service. Coming